So I'd like to welcome everybody here today. We certainly have a wonderful opportunity to introduce you to Hachumak, who's a Peruvian healer. And just a little bit of background about Hachumak. He actually started in the 1990s studying Qigong in Lima's Chinatown. And actually went on then to become the South American Tai Chi champion. But it was through his work with Qigong that he then began to use those energy exercises with patients in the hospitals there in Lima, and actually began to develop kind of his own practice and way of doing healing in the hospitals. From that, he had met some of the traditional Peruvian healers, and for the last 20 years he's been studying with the traditional Peruvian healers, learning their methods, their ways, of how they do it, particularly focusing on looking at the relationships between people and the environment. And from that, developing healing that makes that connection to them. And brings also with that the knowledge of the plant medicines and the knowledge of the sacred geographies in the area to bring about some pretty profound healing for folks. And so now what he does is he comes to places like this.
Ways to Wellness.
At Ways to Wellness. And, bringing these old ways to access the power of nature and help the soul of the individual that he's working with. So we're really pleased here today to hear him talk and explain his knowledge about these topics. So thank you very much.
We're honored to have you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again to everybody for coming and trusting and coming again. And thank you very much to Jeff and Joan for the opportunity. I really feel good in this place. And yeah, I think the crowd here comes because there is this important trust in the quality of what you get for yourselves. So that's great for the community. Here in Midland. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think I will start anyway going back a little bit to what we mentioned on a previous talk, so it serves like a base and for the newcomers too. This knowledge, although it can be framed on different ways and through the centuries and the different cultures, it has taken different shapes and presentations, comes from a very old, primitive observation, which in my belief is quite common to most of the human communities, but very particularly to Americas. My feeling is that the whole American continent shares a particular common soul in many ways. And although the big cultures like the Incas and the previous cultures in Peru and the Mayans and the Aztecs and the Pueblo Indians and the other nations in the continent have very different expressions, I think that everything comes from the same basic observation. And it's going to be up to you to agree with this with your own knowledge about these things. And the first observation is that when we were starting to understand the world, when the mind and the self-consciousness started to be developed probably 200 or a million years ago, we didn't have any books or references, so we humans, we started to have the understanding of the world and the things and our possibilities, and we wanted to understand or to answer the big questions of life. What's the purpose of life? What is reality? What can I do with my life? Why am I alive? What's death? What's giving birth? What happens after death? And in the middle of that understanding, they approach the elements that they had at the time, which was basically your own personal feelings. So nowadays, when you approach the study of the invisible or the study of the internal reality or the spiritual, you approach mostly with the concepts and other people's experiences. and which is perfectly okay, because we live in different times now, and so many different wise people have been putting out their experiences and understandings and sometimes inspirations and revelations. So it's good to share experience. But probably we have forgot a little bit what is the internal possibility that we have in our own personal feelings about life. So I will try to reconstruct on a very, very basic lines the process of refeeling inside the meaning of life, if I can say it like that. And this came to a revelation to me a long time ago when I was in the mountains of the north coast of Peru. I was alone. I was spending all these days merging and learning from the landscape, and then you get all these insights. And this one was very important for me, and it was this vision of being a very primitive human being in the time in which we were only gatherers and hunters and probably scavengers, and we were just building our knowledge and our tools, extremely primitive, hiding and protecting ourselves from the hardness of nature and animals and things. And then through the question to understand what is a human being, one of the approaches that we had was to examine the corpses, the bodies of other humans, and look inside what was close to us, which were the animals or the mammals, and say, I want to understand how I'm made, of what I'm made, and you started to see. So to make the story short, basically what you feel when you see, when you check a corpse, and not from any medical anatomy modern way, just think about like a child mind, you don't know anything, is that basically this trunk, this important part of the body, is made of three things. One of them is this box, which is the skull. And if I relate the skull to what I feel inside of myself, what I discover is that I have my senses and my way to understand and read and appreciate the world through my eyes, through my ears, through the taste, through my nose. So I have this skull, and what I feel into my personal consciousness is that I have perception here. Although perception is also in the tact, and you have the perception of feelings, but at least in the perception of the matter is mainly the skull. It's also the place where you eat and where you express things. So let's take it and leave it like that. Then you have in the chest, you have a cage. You have this mass of ribs that contains these organs, these things. And if I try to understand what that cage means for me, I will say that there is the place where I have most of the feelings. Because when I feel happy, when I feel courageous, when I feel strong, I feel this steadiness inside. And when I feel hurt or sad and my breathing changes, I feel it really here. And I have the palpitations and the heart that changes according to my emotions. I think that never it has been pointed out with enough importance the feeling of the heartbeat for the traditional ancient primitive humans. In terms of physical sensation, is one of the most strong ones. And if you imagine a world in when there is no sound and stimulation, there is no other permanent music and noise, just what nature brings and the moments of silence, when you try to look inside of yourself, the first thing that you connect is your heartbeat. And in traditional medicine, natural medicine or shamanism, if you want to call it, the importance of the heartbeat is essential. When you are working with a group of people, there is a technique to hear and follow the heartbeat of everybody and check how they are doing in their visions. It's a clue point to hear and be close to our heartbeat. It's also the secret behind the drum. So you have this cage, and then you have this palpitating organ, the heart that stops when life stops. And then again, for this primitive person, in the belly you have a bag, and all the organs in the belly, they are inside a bag. And then this is related to what I feel when I'm hungry, when I feel fear and certain basic emotions. It's also where the sexual impulse comes and where babies are carried. And they come out from the belly and the belly grows in the mother. So you distinguish these three different parts of the human anatomy based on the feelings and the things that you get. So again, in the basic build-up of the knowledge or the theory about life, you have this nature of three different places and consciousness or realms inside the human being. And in fact, we feel life and events on different ways in these parts. I will represent it very easy, like with these circles. So you have the head, you have the chest, and you have the belly. These are related or considered places of consciousness. Although consciousness can be anywhere and it's beyond our body, but I feel and I experience life in these different ways. Another very subtle but important feeling that I have met with some of my teachers from really traditional communities is that you feel a pull or a push in your belly in certain spaces of the landscape. When a place or the spirits of a place like you, they pull you from the belly. And when there is rejection, somehow you feel a push on the belly. It's very subtle because we are not in contact with it, but it's there if you connect. In one experience I had in Australia with an Aboriginal man, that he was gracious to take me on a walk and show me things about the forest. He told me that what are the clues for feminine and masculine spots in the landscape, and that normally, well, he was taking this example, but it's the same as the opposite. Men were not going into a spot that was clearly with the signs of a feminine area. And if sometimes they were following a wounded animal that they were hunting, and the animal was entering in that part or probably stumbling and dying in that area, in order to go inside and pick it, they were kind of asking until they feel the pull, who was kind of the permission of the space. And then they were making it quickly. And then if they were taking too long or doing something else, the push was there and it was time to leave. For me it was very interesting because it was like another story, another way of saying the same. It's the same in the spaces. If you feel a certain welcoming emotional atmosphere, you will feel like an ease and a pull from the stomach. And if you feel a rejection that can be probably even hidden behind a mask of sympathy or welcoming, you will feel anyway a push. Might that be the equivalent of what nowadays a lot of people are talking about gut feeling, which is becoming kind of an important trend right now in terms of self-discovery and self-tool, which I find very important and good. Maybe it's related to that, and anyway, the gut feeling thing is showing that there is a consciousness here. And sometimes there is a resistance to call it a consciousness because we think that the consciousness is just one. And it is one, but this is just an expression, a particular organ of the consciousness, if you want. Or we can call it like that. And also the identity of this part is related to life and survival. This is where the sexual mating encounter happens, where the baby grows and the baby goes out. Is also the place where I really feel the hunger and this need of just taking something for continuing feeling strong in the basic understanding of the primitive person. So this is connected to life, to the origin of life. And is considered also the basic, the first one that appears. And because in the ancient times the whole language has been a language of images and analogies and metaphors and representations. To talk about this, you don't need an explanation. You don't need to spend 15 or 20 minutes like I'm doing now. You just represent it by a symbol that you know and you see in nature that that symbol is related to that. So what was chosen in primitive Peru was the snake. This basic primal snake. This area is also the area connected with the basic element of life, which is water. Water, and I'm saying that probably in all the talks, if you check about all the basic rituals and magic and ceremonies done by the primitive societies and any society that stays close to the land, even in modern times, everything is about asking and thanking for the water. The water has always assured the survival of the group. Whenever there is water, people can thrive. When there is no water, there is not going to be animals, agriculture, or everything. Everything is about the water, and the magical spaces of the land that welcomes you are always related to the water. Even a mountain, a sacred mountain in the middle of the flat desert, is also magical because the clouds touch it and there's condensation. And water will come, and also the animals will come to drink, and there's going to be some game to hunt. So everything is about water, and the snake moves and behaves like water. So this is one of the clue observations for taking the snake as a symbol of life. There are others. Also, the snakes are one of the animals that can go everywhere, in the water, in the holes on the ground, and climbing the trees, and other things. It's not any snake, it's particularly the snakes that are like the big snakes that are not poisonous, the boas or the pythons or the equivalents. The chest, because this is the space of action, it's the space when your arms comes and you can touch, and it's the space where you feel what I call the feelings of the heart, that I explained on the previous talk, this family of courage and love, and loving feelings. And it's the place where are the intentions. When people say, in many places, in many traditional communities, probably not in all, but the ones I have seen, they will say, I feel it, I get it. They will not say, I get it. They touch here, they are very close to the movements inside here. So this is the place of will, where you feel intentions, and you deploy your actions from here, the place of the choices. And they have decided to represent it with a cat. The reason why is that the cat, in those spaces where the big cats live, is the animal who is the top of the predator, of the food chain, if we can say it with modern terms, is the animal who always wins, is the animal who is always to overcome, is kind of the stronger, and we want people's heart to be like a strong and not be overruled by other things. It doesn't mean that it's about to become like a cruel predator. It means like to be able to express who we are and put our presence on a way that will not be blocked and stopped by other things. So wherever there has been a big cat all over the world, it has been taken as an important symbol of the presence and the self-power of will, of the personal energy. In some places where there are no cats, some other animals that are similar in terms of their position in nature have been taken. And for the last one, for the parts that is about our perceptions, and also the part when we identify a certain place of ourselves, when we think and we imagine, they have been chosen a big bird. I'll put it like that. Can be, most of the time, it's an eagle, a condor. It's not only because of the size of the animal, it's also because most of those animals are also strong and are able to be kind of the top of the food chain in the air, in the animals that fly. But it's also because they have chosen the animal that is able to fly higher. Eagles and birds of prey, they can go higher than most any other bird flying. They are able to fly, and they like to fly towards the sun and then come down. So this big animal has been, if you want, the one who has the higher perspective. When humans were climbing to the mountains to have inspiration and be able to see the valley down and understand what the position gives you in terms of the way your mind is shaped for thinking. Of course, they know that the birds that are able to see things from so high and just have a full panorama and then choose and then come back so sharp are kind of the ones who represent the possibility, the quality of our choices and understandings. So to say it on another way, in this primitive understanding, when they were offering knowledge to people, what they were telling you is, have your mind and your understanding as being able to see and to be sharp as the eyes of a hawk or an eagle. And that's why the eyes or the face of the hawk or the eagle has been all over the world as a symbol of the power of understanding and the sharpness of decision. And have your heart like a big cat, you know, like we don't say lion heart by accident. It's about make it just roar and open, you know. And then have inside this force of life related to the snake and to the water, the ones that is always surviving. The snake changes the skin, never dies. So it's over death in a primitive mind. So this is kind of the flow of life inside of your belly. In some other cultures, they don't have the snake, but they have, I think, the big cow or bull or ox, because it's also a very earthy, grounded animal for them. Does it make more or less sense? Okay, so it's kind of, this is kind of the basic schooling of the poetic language of the primitive people in America. So these three animals are showing something. They are showing ease in their life, capacity of overcoming and go through problems and situations. What is interesting is that if we try to see what's the opposite, how a person will feel when the person is taken by pain or by a strong depression, or how when the person is taken by a traumatic event that will stop its expression of grounding and place in the world. Some of this area will be kind of shrunk or closed. It's kind of these animals will become like weak. So in the traditional healing, at least the way I have learned, when you work with somebody, you will go and check those three areas to feel how does it feel. And that's why in the traditional healing, and when I'm working and sitting and touching people, I'm touching the head, the chest, and the belly mostly. And of course I can go, there are certain clue points, like on the shoulder blades, on the knees, that you can feel and access things. But most likely, in this basic traditional primitive, and I like it to call it primitive, it's a good word for me. It means true in a certain way for myself. You check these spaces, and in the visions, either on your personal visions in your journey, or in the visions and the way the shaman will see, those three animals will always appear in the American communal soul of shamanism, or visionary work, if you want. When you go and you advance in the world of yourself, the recovery of your health, in the world of the visions, you will sooner or later, you will be facing a cat, a big snake, or a bird. Or you will become one of those, or they will come to walk with you, or they will come in front of you not to scare you, but to show you the power. And this is many times misunderstood by the people that come from a very different cultural perspective, people who come from the West and they go to have an experience with the sacred plants in Peru. Sometimes they will see that an animal is coming and they will see like a snake is coming and they will get frightened because there's no this explanation of we are on a different cultural frame. And that's what I don't consider is it's all the time positive to go and jump in an experience with the sacred plants if you don't get a certain kind of coaching first about the language and the feelings. The same way like a martial arts teacher will come to a student when he's showing a technique. And he will come, he will show the technique, he will demonstrate the technique, but then he will come and he will take the student and show the technique on full power on the student. And many people say, oh, why is he doing that? He's hurting me, or he wants to demonstrate his power over me. But if this is done on the correct way, what he's showing is he's giving the last part of the puzzle. He's showing the power that you have to deploy when you apply the technique. He has shown the mechanics, he has shown how it look like, but then it's about what you have to put out as an energy in order to do it. And that is not explained. So people, sometimes they feel bad. It's the same in the visions. Strong forces of nature, of these symbols of nature will come to you to show you, to make you close to this energy so you can feel, you know, the vibration of it and then understand what it is so you can recreate it and find it. It's different than to be attacked or scared. Does it make sense? Yeah.
I do have a question.
Sure.
For individuals that feel that the snake is gone and the cat is gone, do they wait for that energy to come, or how do they go about finding those energies again?
Well, the answer for that is the whole process of conquering back your health. They don't have to go through these symbols. These symbols are related. It's probably too long now to explain how that works, but the symbols and the world of the visions are related to places and to molecules or atoms of particles of creation, if I can say. I don't know how to say it. It's like, let's say like this. If one day you are in the middle of here, Midland, Michigan, and you take Western African sacred plant for having visions and seeing and recovering your health, a lot of the language that will come to you will be the language of that land. And you will see things that are related to Western African natural metaphors and analogies. If you take plants from the jungle in South America, you are going to have visions and metaphors related to that space. And the same for all over the world. The reason why, and I don't know if quantum physics has an explanation for that, is that the spiritual reality is connected to the material reality. And that phrase, the same as is above, is below, is extremely exact. The same way we travel in the world and we take different food and breathe different air and feel different smells and see different things in different parts of the world, is the same for the spirits. Although the spiritual plane works with different laws of time and space, there is a spiritual geography, there is a spiritual genetics. So it doesn't have to be expressed through these terms. My intention is for you to understand what is behind this language, but at the same time get familiar with the language from the tradition that I come with. So you can also find your own ways to connect with the language of your own personal tradition, space, or spiritual genetics from your ancestors. which is an interesting quest to do that I highly recommend. So how to do it? That's the clue point of the whole work. My first important understanding, I remember when I was in those years young, is that health, and the real health, not the absence of pain in the body, is the real expression of who you are, and also the conformity with the rhythms of nature, which is not the rejection of death or the rejection of becoming older and having the change in our bodies. Is the coping, the healthy coping with the rhythms of life by being yourself. It's conquered, is recovered, is grabbed by yourselves. There is no magic wand, there's nobody that somebody else can do for you to do that. The only thing that the external things do is to offer a space in which you can have a more conscious approach to it. And that goes from what can be called the cleaning, when really there's a nourishment in your soul energy. So the same way your immune system fights against the bacteria and viruses, your internal soul will become stronger by connecting with the flow of life and will want to reject all that poison of past traumas and emotions. And then it will come out and the helper will help to pull it a little bit. But it's an internal decision of your soul thing. So at the end of the day, it's always a personal intention. The healer can only take out, when it's about the cleaning, some stuff that is there, but that will not change the pattern of your personality, if you want. If you have allowed your suffering consciousness to become addicted to sadness and depression, and you are always looking for reasons of sadness and to spaces to feel sad, what the healer can do is can clean a lot of the sadness stuff that is inside. So by applying the energy and tracking and using your tools for shaking and detaching things that are clogged, then you will have catharsis and you will cry and you will put out some of that emotion, and that emotion will be out of your system and you will feel more calm. But that addiction to sadness will not be changed by the healer. The way that is addressed is through a different technique, which is the technique of the mirror. It's through the visions, through the work with the sacred plants, or through the work with times of being yourself alone on certain conditions to face your dark side in certain spaces, to certain diets or retreats, that you will choose to make that change. And in the role of the healer in that moment is to put in front of you a mirror so you can see yourself, and from your soul consciousness you will say, I don't want to be that kind of person anymore. Well, you name it, sadness, all those families of emotions, they drag us out of our center. And we make choices from them, trying to get compensation and protection, and most of the time we make choices that bring more suffering for us and for what surrounds us. On the soul consciousness you have the feelings, and I have chosen to talk about emotions and feelings to make a distinction, but this is very personal semantics. The feelings are the families of the heart, the family of love, with gratitude and all forms of love and forgiveness, and that brings you to your heart. And the other family of the love of justice and courage and tenacity and faithfulness and love of truth. Both are part of our nature. This is part of ourself, the same way our body, and we see life through that. The problem is when this is overdimensioned. This is there just like a membrane of the soul, but because of our emotional miseducation, and because we are most of the time thrown out in life without the elements of understanding the world, and we don't have elements to deal with this, this has overgrown and it becomes the major space where we stay in our life and when we sense and feel and decide what to do in our life. Bring back, or at least put the consciousness on an equal space to be able to have both consciousness equal and ponder and decide from both of them is kind of the ideal way of going through life. And most of the spiritual work is about how to dissolve and understand and get free of the automatic impulses of the suffering consciousness. Call it that the negative ego, because the positive ego is just the natural membrane of the soul that allows us to be a person. We have been giving it, and we should be in harmony with it, and the ego should be just the actuator, the one who expresses the will and the understanding of the soul. But it has put in too much, so it has become the prime minister that has overruled the president or the queen, and is taking over. And the only way the suffering consciousness sees life is through compensation and control, because it's mainly driven by fear and all these necessities, ambition, greed, and all these other impulses to compensate some need of control and of grounding that it doesn't have. For example, if you go to the traditional vices that were listed in the past, like gluttony and lying and laziness, they all come from this space. They come as a way of staying in an illusionary state of happiness and joy that is extremely fragile, never will last too long. You will have to pay for it constantly with all these vices, and you will never be able to find peace. But we say that we have been caught. So a vicious person from a medieval or ancient way of understanding is a person who stays in the suffering consciousness and just marinates on it and is unable to touch and connect with the soul. And what I'm saying have been understood so many different ways by the people in the past, all the ancient philosophers, all the ancient mystics, and they have been trying to put up different ways to explain this or to offer tools or ways for people to connect with the soul. A lot of good quality stuff has been put out in organized religion. Nowadays that we reject organized religion because we think that it has been serving power and control, which is true, but at the same time we should be smart and discern. Because remember that in the past it was a time in which if a child was showing certain abilities and possibilities of connecting with philosophy and thinking and the spiritual, in the jungle when they see a child, girl or man that is fond of the spirit, is able to see things and have these questions about life, they know that this person will be able to handle and help the community for the spiritual, and they will probably give them advice and share ideas. So in the past, if a child was showing that, he was put in the church to become a priest, because that was the only opening for that space, to become a spiritual person, a priest or a nun. So, talking about the Catholic Church, during its history, it has been full of amazing people that were priests or bishops, not necessarily people of power, but people who really got this gift from nature, but society was only offering that space. And these people have been writing books with amazing, interesting understanding and knowledge about natural remedies and observation and spiritual exercises. So it's something to really discern from the really wise point of view, not going just like an automatic hater. Yeah, which is what is just pure suffering consciousness stuff. Nowadays, our society is so much driven by the suffering consciousness that success is related to control. What is put out as becoming a successful person if you really check what is behind the lines, are just ways of control. It's more, the more the better, and then at the same time, be sure that you will not lose it, and be sure that you are all the time just in control of everything, the situation, how people look at you, what you have, etc. All of that is just a trap of the suffering consciousness. If I'm going to say it on a different way, the most important quality, I believe myself, on a person who is devoted to healing, or if you want, the ultimate expression of self, what's the word, like, it's not self-security, it's of being grounded, of really being yourself and not be taken by fear, is the capacity of play, of playing. If you are able to play, and to play even with yourself and go out of whatever box is put out by society, by people, by the community, and become just able to do something else, then that's an expression of, a real expression of just being in yourself and being able to come back and handle energy. Because if not, it's an illusion of the suffering consciousness, framing things, this is good and this is bad. Does it make sense, more or less? Yeah, yeah. I explained on the other talk, this is just for the record, for the camera, this is the second talk on a series of two, in which in the first one I was developed more the anatomy of the suffering consciousness and the soul the way I understand it. So I was explaining about the partial truth. I will just say something shortly about it. The same way our body has a skeleton, but the skeleton is only a small part of who we are, but we need it in order to walk, to work, to do things. The same way our suffering consciousness needs a basic structure. That basic structure, the skeleton for the suffering consciousness, for the ego, if you want, is the basic rules of moral or ethics in life. We need it. We cannot just become like a mass of unmoving tissue with our bodies. The same way with our suffering consciousness, we need a structure of what is correct or incorrect from whatever group we are, from whatever natural approach we have. The excess of rules, it's become stagnation. So the excess of partial truths, the excess of rules that we see the life is the equivalent of arthritis for the soul consciousness, for the ego. An arthritic ego is the person who is full of rules and checkboxes and will give its love and its smile according to the way those checkboxes are filled. And we'd also be able to feel at ease and relax and play and smile only with a lot of checkboxes are checked. So the less checkboxes you have, the more easy it's going to be for you to enjoy, the dance of life. But we need some checkboxes. The full anarchy, spiritual anarchy of whatever, doesn't work and has never been understood like that by a traditional community. Because we are gregarious animals, we need rules for being together. And if you check, it's very interesting how in most of communities, there are a couple of things that are universal. Stealing, taking from somebody else things, has always felt, and is always out of the good code of conduct. Lying, or if I extend that to the traditional code, not fulfilling your promises, it's also being considered out of the ethical code in most of the cultures of the world. Killing And most of the time it's very interesting because killing, even in the Ten Commandments and other cultural things, most of the time killing, it's only applied inside of the community. It's always okay to kill the foes of the group, but it's not okay to just kill between us because we are a community and we have all these different rules to solve our problems. Sometimes with fights, but ideally the killing thing, it's put out because the community, the family knows how to take things. So all these basic rules are important. And I'm talking about the skeleton of the soul consciousness because when you go into spirituality, it's the same when you start to learn something that you have never learned before. You need some basic rules. The same way somebody who goes into learning music or martial arts or any other thing, you need some basic concepts in order to function. But later on, when you really you have really integrated that body of knowledge in yourself, then you become a creator, a researcher, and you are able to check those rules. And I don't know if it has happened to you, but when you are learning something and you have your teachers are very good because they put things clear. What is the right way of doing certain things? I'm thinking about my martial arts or Tai Chi learning. So there are certain basic rules in the way of placing things and feeling things in order to achieve something. But then it happens that several years after you go to hear a lecture of somebody that is kind of super high level on that body of knowledge, a big engineer, an important philosopher or something. And then you see that this guy seems to know, is giving a lot less. What he's giving is a lot of doubts, apparently. I mean, he knows too much that it seems that he doesn't know it, and he's putting out, maybe if this can be done like that, and probably we don't know about this. And he's really in the frontier, on the border of the knowledge. So things become a lot more, he's able to question, because everything can be seen from a different perspective. It's the exact same thing for spirituality. You go first and you start to explore yourself, and you have a real basic code about understanding what is painful or hard for you. And you build up that code for you. Everybody has a personal code. And the exploration of yourself to the traditional systems is about throwing you into the pool of your suffering consciousness. That's what happens when you take the sacred plants. You will go in and you will see visions and memories of everything that have hurt you, of the things that are hidden, the things that you have done that were wrong, but you have just put them back and not wanting to see them. You are going to remember situations that were important or impacted you in different ways, good or bad. You are going to see the spaces of thoughts that you are allowing that are in fact harming you or harming others. You will feel all the different pains with clear memories or probably unknown memories, but you are going to feel the discomfort of all the fears, the pains and the traumas that are inside of you. So it's a very strong touch and exploration of this space of your suffering consciousness. And then from there, with the help of the spirits, with the help of the guide of the ceremony, you will be able to start clearing all this mess, this puzzle. Something that I hear often when people have been doing the plans and they come and when we are digesting the work, most of the time they say, I didn't know I had such a mess of things inside. Yeah, because we after 30 or 40 years of life at least, we have already accumulating so much, so many loose ends that have stayed out. It's not it's not uncommon that after ceremony with the sacred plants, and it's something that I encourage, people will make a list of people that they need to call as soon as they go back home to solve situations, to say, forgive me, or I love you, I never said it enough. Because those are strong pulses that they belong to the most close area of the suffering consciousness, to the soul. to this healthy ego that is able to manage and administrate the understandings and the feelings of the soul. Is the one who really works well with the soul. And is the one that has been just tossed under all these strong mechanisms of compensation and control. This way of reading, I don't think in my belief is anything new what I'm saying. It's just another angle of perspective of talking about what any wise person or a person that was really trying to understand the mind from even the Freudian point of view or the Jungian way of understanding the human unconscious through the philosophers in the past. It's just basic understanding. The only problem, the task that is difficult, is how we address that space. Of course, when we are in love, everything seems so clear and the soul gets just so fed and strong that we all become generous and good and able to take whatever bad thing because the soul is fed by the force of life. One of the important tools in the natural healing, in the natural shamanic way, is to help people to discover that the land loves you, to discover this universal love that is there for you, that you have probably forgot or disconnect by the amount of pain. An interesting part of it is how we work with the father and mother figure, because we are the result of the connection of our parents. We like it or not, we have a good image of our parents or not, we are the result of their connection. So they are the human representation of the two principles of the masculine and of the feminine that is in nature. And they are the representation of those principles with their own suffering consciousness, therefore with their own mistakes and mechanisms of control and emotions that take over and things like that. They might have been extremely harmful, and some people in their life story, they have been really victims of the suffering consciousness monsters, or some of the parents. Or the parents have been completely absent. They have been orphans, or they have been died at a young age, or they have left. But at the end of the day, in this strong impact and pain, the way we judge the presence of our parents, one of the lines of clearing out that pain, of solving that conflict inside, is by helping people to connect with the parental energies that are in the landscape, that are in nature. This is one of the ways I have learned. I know that there are other ways. But if you are able to connect through your self-exploration and to these mystical or spiritual experiences in nature with those principles, and you understand that life is there all the time carrying you, all the time it's there, around, there all the time, no matter what we do, no matter what we feel. And the sun is coming out every day to warm us, no matter what we do. And the moon is there, sometimes shining, sometimes dark, but its presence is moving around. And all life around is flowing on the same way around us. What I'm saying are just words now. I'm just expressing something that is beyond words and is felt in these mystical moments that the training is about. When you get it, then you will understand that your parents were only like a prism of those forces. But those forces, this mystical fatherhood from nature and mystical motherhood, is there for you, and that heals completely and makes you forgive a lot more easy. I don't know I always try to be practical in my talks and give you stuff, so it can be useful for you. I don't know how to say more about this, because it's a mystical expression. What is coming right now on the back of my head is to talk about the power of water, the healing power of water. Because the whole journey starts with water. it's not by accident that baptism, the first sacrament, starts with water. And it's not by accident that the baby comes out wet. It's always the same reading of the primitive mind. I'm trying to bring you, instead of speaking about a tradition and this is the way, and I'm trying to bring to the grasping how the primitive people were touching. Water is extremely connected with life and benefit for us in all its ways. And just the presence of water washes things out of us. It doesn't have to have a soap. Just by being exposed to water washes. So most of the journey of training the shamanic path, the way I learned, I was sent by everything started with my students, my patients at the hospital. I was helping them with the movements and with the energy work for their illnesses in these villages in the north of Peru, and some of them, they had this knowledge about the plants and the ancient ways of knowledge, and they really wanted to share. They wanted, I feel, to pay back the attention and what I was giving to them. They couldn't pay with money, so they were paying me back with hospitality, with soul hospitality, which implies knowledge too. So they started to tell me about these lakes or waterfalls and the importance to go into those spaces, to submerge yourself in those lakes without necessarily having any intention, without knowing anything. But they know that the lakes, they might like you, and they might give you something, and you will find something in those experiences. I really like very much this respect for the individuality in this path. It's not about formatting the minds by a structure of belief. This is extremely connected with survival in the primitive times. So the survival of the group is by enhancing the talents of the individuals. So we have more tools and more possibilities. You can have hunters that are specialized in different animals, so they can bring different types of things for the group. Or whatever other things, people that know about more certain things. It's about sharing knowledge and possibilities. So the primitive shamanic training is based about making you find your things. And if I want you to find your thing, I will not tell you too much, because I want you to find your thing. And because everything is related to feelings, it's not through concepts. So you will go, and you will go to, normally when you go to the lakes, you are asked to go alone, and there are these mystical, powerful places that people respect. When sometimes somebody takes you, or sometimes somebody takes you to a lake, and it's a long walk, or you go on horseback, or it's anyway a long walk. There's no roads in most of them. And then the person will show you the place, but then they will tell you, when you come, now that you know the place, come one day alone, come on your own to see what you can find. So when you do that, something that I have observed is that in the presence of these big places, people talk quiet. So let's go again into the primitive mind. Why is that? We are walking in the middle of the plains of 4,000 meters of the sea level, 12,000 feet. You feel the presence of the land and the particular feeling in yourself from the atmosphere. And you are walking around the lake, and every time that somebody says something important, you will say it's super quiet. Why the important thing is not say it firmly? Remember, this is it. It's the opposite of that. You are going to be told like, and this is, the subtle, important truths of life are spoken like this. One possibility, I'm just giving you open questions, one possibility it is because the real truth of life is touched on the subtle level all the time. It belongs to this quiet level of reality in which everything is on the seed level and everything changes. When you get messages and when you get things, you get them on a very subtle way inside of your mind. When you get messages or you get this kind of connection with a place, with a mountain, with a lake, with a waterfall. It's extremely subtle. And when you are doing the healings, all these movements of energies and colors and patterns and vibrations that you have been able to keep in yourself from all those places, they will always come on a very subtle level. So probably the soft-spoken way, it's a way of staying close to that sensation, because again, everything is about physical sensations. So you go to those places, and then normally you don't talk, you stay in silence. After dark, after the night is completely well set, then you can sing or you can make some music or something. And then whenever you feel the call, it can be in the night, in the day, you go and you immerse yourself in the lake. Those probably 5 seconds in super cold water, they feel like an eternity, and you get a lot of things. Everybody gets it. I'm talking by my experience. I have coached and taken people during more than 20 years to do things. Not too many, because my work always is on a very small scale, and I like it like that. I like to be able to deliver what I have received, so it's always on a small scale. That's probably the way it has always been. But even if people are not totally aware, they will remember later. The way the land gives you is there very, very strong. But sometimes people don't get it because they are waiting for extremely high impact things. But it's a learning. You learn little by little how to connect with this subtle language of nature. So whatever you get is going to talk to your personal talents. And then you are going to be able to express and to bring that to your situations, to your life. When you have connect with a sacred place, it will come back in your dreams. You will dream with a place, or you will dream with some kind of a story that happens in that space, or with that space coming. More strongly, when you gather those connections, and that's the major part of the tool of the natural shaman, is the major part of my personal toolbox, because I don't work with the spirits of the dead. I only work with forces of nature. That's what my teachers were more fond of. That's what life brought me. So it's my thing. You are touching a patient, and you will feel that suddenly you are transported with the patient on that place to work. Even if we are in this room, I will heal the waterfall, or I will see that we are there, or I will feel the sensations or the memory of the mountain, or I will remember the mountain in my visions. They like to come, because those forces, they really like to work with humans. They like to establish love stories with human beings. I don't know more about it. It will probably always stay as a mystery, and it doesn't matter. But they are there waiting for us. So I will go into explaining something about this way of recovering your health, but it's a lot more than that. This is part of a personal crusade I'm in. I believe that if we want to make a real change, and that has come through revelations or inspirations in nature, the first path to become a natural healer, and the first part to recover your health, really grounded health, not just the absence of suffering, but really the wisdom, comes through what I call to become a child of the earth, a child of the land, if you want. And that's the beginning. That's the beginning how I train. So I'm just putting out as an example. You establish a love story and a love connection with your land. And we can be connected to the land on different ways. We are connected to the land where we live, and that is very important to honor. We become connected with the land where we have lived, where we have been, because probably we have moved out of a place. So the place of our birth, or our younger years, or the places of our younger years. But you can also connect with the land that your ancestry is connected, because that genetical spirituality, spiritual genetics, is all the time there present. And why not, with the means of today, the possibility of moving, of traveling, of knowing, a lot of more things are there for us. It's very important to become a child of the land, because life, the life that you have, is the result of all these elements of creation. And the biggest form of life is the life of the land. Between the big spirit, or the way we can feel God, and us in our small life, the landscape carrying us is the major stop. It doesn't mean that we cannot connect with the big spirit on our personal things, but we often forget that all that happened also because we are carried by the land. The land feeds us, and the rules of creation, with the sun bringing the warmth and the light, and all the other presence, and the rhythms of the moon just keeping things alive. And all life is there because the land is there. And I don't believe too much, and again, this is very personal. I believe that the concept of self-spirituality carries a trap in it. Because it's self-enlightenment, self-spirituality, self-development, and it produces sometimes the illusion that we can do everything on ourselves and we are disconnected with everything. I understand that concept of the self thing as a reaction of being over-empowered by an organized spiritual frame that probably is extreme controlling, or an unhealthy game that is set up by a person of power or a guru of certain type. So, of course, let's find the wisdom inside of us, and that's perfectly correct. But it's important to understand that to find the self-wisdom, or the wisdom of the world inside of us, goes through recognizing that we have received that wisdom from creation, that we are a child of the land again. So this parental force of nature that I was mentioning before, this natural masculine and feminine, that is all the time for us and is beyond the mistakes of our human parents, not only heals that primal wound, but is there to come to us all the time with the healthy parental masculine and feminine energy to carry us, to inspire us, to explain and to host our pains. To become a child of the land, what I call a child of the land, starts by connecting with the force of life of the land. And the way of doing it, the only way I know, is by going to natural places that are away of the major human settlements. You can find places that can be talking to you on your own. And you can also look for what tradition has left. Places that were recognized as important, powerful places by the ancients that were, of course, in touch with their feelings. I have to make a distinction there. There are places that have always been related to important presences of the landscape, but there are also other places that are considered sacred because they are related to the story of a particular group of people. Places where there have been battles, or important memory places for something about a community. So if you are liking and merging with the communal soul of that community, that's fine. But I'm talking more about places that are recognized in the landscape. When you work with the visions, when you take the sacred plants, or you find in your meditations the way of seeing the energy, it's not so difficult. There are certain places that glare different than others. And there are certain places that pulls you on a different way than others. But the ancients, through thousands of years, have been very smart, and they have already given a certain reading of the landscape. For me in Peru, it was never too difficult, because in Peru, because the story of the country and the colony, two things happen parallel. I think during the colonial times and the conquistador times, they needed the labor to work on the land. So the natives, the original native Peruvians, the Peruvian Indians, if we can call it Indians, there were big massacres and a lot of extermination in certain areas. But the big mass was kept in this kind of semi-slave way of living, because they needed to work on the mines and on the fields. So somehow a lot of the popular beliefs in the popular traditions, the folklore traditions, there is a continuity about many things. But at the same time, what they did is that they were very efficient to break and make this traumatic belief that people's identity was wrong and was not worth it. So they really managed to extinguish a lot of the ancient religion. And only some, of course, remains have left in some isolated communities. But the people I work with were people from the fields. They were most of them peasants or working class people. They were not able to reconstruct a lot of the religious feelings and mystical understandings of the past, but they kept the respect from the land. They knew what mountains were important, what lakes were important. Some of the old generation still keep the memory of respect and how to pay respect to them. So it wasn't too difficult to go to those places. I will say again what I have said before for the record. If you go to a sacred place or a place that talks to you, it can even be a place that is fond of you, that you have liked as a child, even if it's not a recognized sacred place, but a place where you feel good. Go on your own. Don't go with other people if you want to establish your personal connection. Try to feel comfortable on your own. Be patient. Stay there for a while. Don't put too much intention. Just connect as a child. Take it as a playground. Connect with the feeling of you like to be there, so you remember and you enjoy the feelings. And then you can, of course, say thank you in many ways and feel it. And just wait. Just wait. It comes back to you. There will be either the sound of an animal that lives on the place that will come, probably the roar of an important animal of the area, the presence of an animal coming to you. Probably you will feel a shake on the ground, soft, small shake. Probably it's going to be an opening in the sky or a rainbow. So many different ways that the place is telling you, you know. So probably you will feel an inspiration, have a vision. Probably you have a sudden emotional release out of the blue. All those are ways that the spirit of the land is talking to you. And then embrace that moment. Everything is about the feelings. Embrace that moment inside and keep it as a very cherished moment. And then come back. I don't know any other way. This probably sounds extremely vague, but that's the way to connect, because the love of the land will infuse love in your hearts. It's not necessarily an extremely cuddling parental love. It will infuse this calm, wise love inside of yourself. Little by little you will feel that that is making you be on a certain different way, that you will feel more clear or more strong, more in your heart or more coming out from your own wisdom. just because you are feeding your soul in the presence of those places and connecting with your feelings. Not with the disturbance of asking, I want this is what I came for. Please help me with this. Most of the time that's a lot of the suffering noise. Just go there and enjoy the same way a child enjoys a nice garden. It's extremely vague in appearance, and it's extremely vague for the suffering consciousness who wants a lot of control and assurance. But that's the way of playing and dancing with nature. That will start to heal you in this very subtle way. But at the same time, you will feel your responsibility on the other side of the love story for the land. All the knowledge about the sacred plants or the healing plants or how to do certain things will come as a consequence of becoming a child of the land. The only way to become a child of the land is to go and be a child of the land. So all what I'm saying is how to be a child of the land. Go and enjoy the land. It's extremely powerful. It just needs a little patience. And of course, if you go into the waters, I don't know how much it is about here, but if you go and swim and submerge in the water, it makes so much for you. And then you will start to get inspirations. If the land likes you and wants to work with you, you will make human contacts that seems to be random or seems to be disconnected for that, but all of that is hosted and protected by the land, who wants to make yourself an expression, a protector of the land. It's my personal belief that we will be able to do more for changing and protecting nature and the world when it is threatened by the way our species have grown. We will be able to do more in the long term by establishing this loving story with the land, that making these probably extreme actions that come most of the time from pain, which are important sometimes. We need urgent actions. But on a long term, to become a child of the land and to make children like to learn the land will change the feeling. The extreme greed, the extreme madness of being unaware of our place in the world comes from the disconnection with those feelings of the land. Because we don't know it. People don't know it. How can we ask them to think differently? They are totally foreign to those feelings. Everything starts with a feeling. And in terms of the suffering consciousness, to go back a little bit to what I explained last time, the only way to go away from an emotion is to replace it by a feeling. The only way to go away from anger, from fear, from depression that is taking over is not by jumping for another emotion, which is the only thing the suffering consciousness knows to do. Is by finding and bringing back the physical sensation of a nice memory of a feeling that you have touched, and then be able to call it, and that will dissolve very easy the way an emotion is taking over you. Everything is about the feelings. And remember, on the toolbox of a primitive healer, on the toolbox of a common human being in the ancient times, the only things that you had were feelings. Those are your treasures. One of them is very important, it's the most important of all for healing, and it is hope. Hope is gold in the spiritual realm. If you have a lot of hope, you are a rich person. If you lose hope and you have little hope, you become poor spiritually. The life force is a permanent expression of hope. Why do the animals try to save their life? What is the mechanism on a little creature? To run and put us as much as it can to not be taken by a predator, by a threat? Why do we want to thrive? Why the impulse of animals? They keep themselves because they want to continue mating and thriving. Why does a mother become so strong when their children are threatening? Why the most fierce animal that you can find in nature is a threatening mother with her cubs? From where comes this impulse of continuing, wanting to continue staying here? Why do we want to become healed and overcome illnesses? Why do we want to stay here longer? It's an expression of the force of life. It's the nature of the force of life. To thrive, to shine, to stay bright here. The understanding of a spirituality as wanting to leave this world, like I know that the best chapter is one will come after I deincarnate. No, disincarnate. Until I leave this limited body and this trap of the ego, and then that's where everything starts. It's hard to understand for me. I respect other understanding and other spiritualities. Probably they are right. But as a natural healer, I'm in touch with the force of life all the time, and I deal with people's pain. And I understand how hope is the ultimate extreme expression of life. That little animal is hoping to be able to continue with his life. It's the force of the belly center. It's the force of the snake of life. So if we understand that, and at the end of the day, the ultimate only thing that we can bring on a healing is the force of life. Every technique and every tool and method that we have is just a way of making people to connect more with this force of life. So saying that, talking again about feelings and vibration, the elementary toolbox of the shaman are all these feelings and vibrations that you have gathered in contact with the landscape, with the animals, with the plants, and with the spirits that help you. And you bring those vibrations when you are touching your patient. So when I'm doing a healing, I touch the person and I'm sensing and I'm reading with the empathic technique, and then I will get all these different ways of sensing the basic pain of the person and the emotions that are normally stay on the person. I will get physical sensations in my body. I will get all these patterns and colors, and I will see probably these disgusting, grayish, manure-alike things. And I will get sometimes some explanations about something. So all these tools that I bring, that we call in the Peruvian shamanic thing, and I don't like to say shamanic all the time, I don't like that word, but let's say in this natural healing, are all these winds and colors, these good winds from the mountains, these good waters. But in fact what I'm bringing is the memory that I have been able to keep in myself alive of the vibrations, of the sensations in my body, of the feelings that I connected. It's just the transmissions of feelings from those powerful places in nature. It's the same with the plants. It's the same with the animals. To meet in the plants, to understand and make a connection with the plants, sometimes you only need to sit with the plants and wait and feel what they produce in you. Even if it is non-cognitive, even if the plant never tells you anything, even if you never get anything, just by feeling it. And then, this is very important, it's a special capacity that you develop to keep those memories inside of you alive because you love them. It's not by accident when we talk, we say to the person that we love, I carry you with me, you are with me. It's a mystery there. We are bringing, somebody has probably died, but we carry this person with us, because what we are carrying is this feeling of the vibration. So all those things, they come on the healing. And we can say, I have been doing a healing with this patient, and that plant came to me, and this and that plant came to me, or this waterfall came to me to help. So what is happening is that the vibration of the feeling of that connection came to the surface, and I was able to transmit it to the patient. Does it make sense? Okay, okay. So in a certain way, this question, who is healing? Is it you who is healing? Is nature who is healing? Is God who is healing? All of them. All of them. Because when I sense something that is stuck there and then something is brought to my conscious attention, is for me to try to do something, not to just stay passive and watch it. Is to at the same time to try to suck it or to clean it and to push it back. And when there is a curse and I feel all these awful things coming and that are keeping the person as a prisoner, and I'm fighting them to kill them and to really put the person away of that, I'm proactive, I'm doing it. But at the same time, most of the time, I'm just witnessing how all these memories of the feelings come alive. They are actuating. Because at the end, they are all expressions of the force of life. And what happens most of the time is that the soul consciousness of the person that has been extremely depleted or just covered by these layers and layers and layers of pain and reactions to pain from the suffering consciousness is too weak. So when you infuse the force of life, that soul shakes and starts to put out things or make things easier for the healer. It's the soul consciousness who is putting all these different things on the table. It's very interesting how it works, because I'm saying all the time, what is right for today is what is going to come on a healing. The things that you can handle today, or the priority list of your soul consciousness, that might be very different than the list that the patient is just saying in the beginning of the session, can be very different. What is right is going to be okay. And after 4 or 5 or 6 sessions, then suddenly one day a big secret comes out on the session. So we have already, the person have been probably cathartic and crying or trembling, some unconscious release, and then the person has been feeling all this amazing change and feels better in its life. But then suddenly after 3 or 4 sessions, a big secret that was kept, really, really, really deep, came to the surface, and we touch it. And that's why probably all the other things needed to happen first. And it's also because the trust bridge, or sometimes this layer of the positive ego that is surrounding the soul consciousness, needs to get rid of a lot of the noise to be ready to handle something. I never know. I never try to understand too much. I'm not trying to deliver to you today a full explanation of the mechanisms of things. I'm normally reluctant to put too much to the mind. I like to stay close to the feelings. And the same way with the animals, with the forces that come to you, with the encounters with the spirits that come in the visions that they like to work with you. All those forces come together. That's why, if you want, the healing sessions are at the same time 2 things. A healing session in the sense that you will come out more close to your health, but they are at the same time a certain way of passive spiritual development, because your soul will get more nourished. So after the sessions, after being in contact with those forces, you will be more in touch with your own wisdom. And I hear that constantly from my patients in different ways. They can say it in all sorts of ways, but what they are saying in a certain way is that I'm more myself, I'm more in contact with my own wisdom, I'm able to see clear, to feel clear. Besides probably the big physical problems that we have been addressing. But that is only the beginning of the journey. The beginning of the journey starts sometimes as a patient more passive, but it's so beautiful to see how tradition has established this journey as you become more and more active. And at the end, this is very beautiful to witness. The healer, if you want, or the shaman, or the person with certain power in the dynamic of the healing, at the end of the day will become your witness of the things that you are doing. It's the same with the journey with the sacred plants. It has 3 different chapters. In the beginning, when you take the sacred plants, you take it mostly at night. And the reason why is the energy of the night enhances better to look inside of yourself. Because we want to start the journey by your self-explanation. Know yourself before you know the world. So in the beginning you will take the plants and you will have visions and sensations that are related to your personal emotional story. You will purge on different ways and you will understand and acknowledge things about your story. And that's the beginning. I will say something shortly about the purge because I'm exchanging with a lot of people in my trips and explain this about the natural code to my patients. There are different ways to purge. Most of the time people purge air or water. It's mostly only that. And sometimes some mental matter which is related to air, but sometimes it comes out in the visions like a smoke coming out. Every time that somebody is clearing out something with air in the sessions or with the plants, and I'm saying this in general for all the healers that are here, air always means an excess of mental space. We build up in our minds a huge space when we overthink. And we are making those games that we said last time that the suffering consciousness do. We try to change the past by having fantasies of living a situation that has been painful or uncomfortable, and we change the story to relieve a little bit our suffering. So we have these fantasies of living that again, changing the story to feel better. That's a compensation game of the suffering consciousness, and that's overthinking. We have fantasies of the future, in when we live situations that are very pleasant to us. And every adolescent has had all these fantasies about things in your life. And there's a moment when the suffering consciousness starts to take place in this final shape at the same time as the physical body between 14 and 23 years old. It's the time of the big fantasies. We start to fantasize a lot of things in our life because the suffering consciousness is bubbling up. They are not bad in the sense that they are fulfilling the hope. They are bad in the sense that when they become like a vicious space in which we compensate from the acts that we are not able to do. And then the third thing that the suffering consciousness does is we try to control the present. We try to have a full control of what is happening. What are you thinking? Are you okay with me? You think that I'm okay. I'm checking every little sign, to see what is happening there. We live life like that, and we are taught to have success by being efficient at doing that. But those 3 things, changing the past, create a future that suits our needs, and have a full over control of the present, are absurd. But we spend a lot of our vital energy in these needs of the suffering consciousness, in its most external controlling part. So all that overthinking, when you work with somebody that is recovering its place and the connection with the soul consciousness, a lot of that will be exposed. Is even more with the vicious fantasies, when people have created an extreme space of vicious fantasies. And believe me, and I'm saying this for the record because I'm working with a lot of addictive people with interesting things. There is a lot of addicts that never take any substance, but they are addicts in these fantasy kind of opium dreams in their minds. And they live there. And they go immediately, as soon as they have a moment when they stop their duties, they go and they lie on their chair, on their bed, and they start to think all these fantasies in which they compensate things, and they are disconnecting themselves from the proper life, from sensing the present time. So all those things, when they are clean like air coming out of ourselves. So they are clean like burps, like sighs, farts, different types of flush, bubbling in the belly that will turn out later, coming out when you go to the toilet. And this kind of a smoke that you feel that comes out of the patient, or the patient feels when you are in the visions. All this is excessive thinking that you are carrying a lot in ourselves. And then you also clean and flush through water, and that's the most important one. You will clean emotional content through water. What is happening is that your body is taking water from your tissues and putting it out in the external space, not only to represent, it's really happening all together. If there is a real extraction of an emotion for your body, it will be a real extraction of water from your body. It's really amazing. It's like as is above is below. And that's also why for a lot of mental people disconnected from nature, the traditional natural healing sounds very crude. A lot of people say, I don't want to do that because I don't want to feel sick. I don't want to vomit. That's so bad and so uncomfortable, so unelegant. But it's a real extraction from your body and will have to be expressed as a change if there's a real extraction in your body. And nature is so wise. So what happens, and I'm talking to some people here who we have been doing some healings, in probably 90%, 9 of 10 people that I work with on the healings, they have some bubbling in the stomach. They will hear that their stomach, their guts, stomach or intestines are going to make these block, 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 block sounds. What is happening at that moment is something very positive. The body is pouring out water into the stomach or the intestines when an emotion is being extracted from your system. So it's already in the outer space, because our tract until the end is external space. And the people who learn about medicine know that. So it's already out of our cells, our tissues. And later when you go to the restroom, you will just flush what is already out, but it's already out. You will cry, which is also water. You will have phlegm. A lot of people, they start to have cleaning, and you will have a lot of saliva. You will sweat. Or you will have diarrhea, which is also a strong amount of water in the intestines. Or you will vomit, which is a lot of water in the stomach. A lot of things happen, those things happen on a major scale when you do the work with the plants. With the work with the sacred plants, is that the plants are so able to connect and wake up and nourish the consciousness of the soul, that the suffering consciousness doesn't stop, but really gets on a more like its right place. So the soul will be able to take the commandment of the self and will be able to work and clean and understand what is going on, the suffering consciousness. That's why the ceremonies with the plants are done for. So that's why people will have these massive amounts of purging or diarrheas or things. And there's an interesting code with it. The things that you know, but you don't pay attention to, or you have forgot, and you need to be reminded, will come as a vomit, because they come in front of your eyes to be seen. And there is a technique that when you feel that something, all these things start to gather in your stomach, and then you start to feel sick, and you know that something will come out. And as long as you work more with the plants during the years, you become more proficient with recognizing what is going on, what is going to come. So they come and they are ready to come out, and you have to just allow them. So when they come out, you will vomit either on the ground or a container. You will be asked to look at what you are vomiting. And as you are vomiting, or just after, you are going to see situations or faces of people or things that you had some kind of wrong business with. Even sometimes people that might be good to you, but you really don't know too much, and then the real reality, the real situation is going to be shown in front of your eyes. And you will put out all these disgusting things, and it's so nice how intuitively things have been sensed by people inspired. Like when in the comics, people, they put that when somebody is super angry and is shouting these bad things, they put these bubbles and they put all these worms and things like that. This is exactly what comes out. You will see all these universal symbols of unpleasant things coming out in front of you, and you understand what it is. Sorry. When you have diarrhea and you go to the toilet and you have a massive cleaning through diarrhea, is water that has been poured out in your intestines, and what comes out then is most of the time things that you don't know, things that belong to your ancestors or to your parents, or curses that have been put on your back and you don't know about them. And also I have observed that with people that have never had any training in self-observation, and sometimes they live their life completely disconnected. They really don't know what is happening with themselves or with their body, and they majorly purge through that way, almost never in front of their eyes. It's very interesting to see how, for example, the European spiritual tradition has associated air to the mind and water to the emotions, in terms of the four Aristotelian and Paracelsian elements, water, earth, and fire, and wind. That wind or swords are connected with the mental, and cups and water are associated with the emotional, because nature is showing exactly. I'm sure it's an echo of the primitive understanding of those elements. So in the session you will have all this bubbling, which is an excellent sign that things are put out, or people will have different types of flushing. And I have sessions in which people, they run and they go to the toilet for different reasons. So that's very, very interesting, the expression of the physical cleaning. Also something that happens in the sessions is that you see that the patient starts to make some movements. Sometimes they start to tap, start to vibrate like this. Sometimes it becomes really big amplifier and the whole body is moving, like sometimes like this or like this, or sometimes the feet start to move without stop. What that means is those are screams of anger and reactive pain to suffering that has never been able to go out of the system. It's bouncing inside. And even if the person is calm, is functioning, because you are tuned on an external consciousness, with the use of the force of life and with all the different shamanic tools, you bring to the surface what needs to come out. And then those expressions are always the surfacing of these pains mostly of anger. Cramps. In the beginning they start to come, so this is just a diagnosis, you see that is out. So then comes the craft of helping the person to really cathartic and take those things out. That's very, very interesting. I'm surprised by the amount of sexual molestations that are present and people don't know about them. I'm so surprised, and it's so sad, to see the amount of people who carry those things. Because of course our conscious memory was not developed too much when we were younger than 2 years old. And even if some things have been happening after, sometimes we have really decided to forget this strange, uncomfortable thing. The clue with molestation is that it's always related with power. Because the child has been under the tyrant oppression of a bigger power, either through some kind of sexual molestation or through any possibility of not being able to have the time to process or to choose something. So that is so interesting. When I'm working with somebody and I start to get some clues about the presence of a forgotten molestation, many times the body of the patient will express a movement of that they want to shake out something that it's unpleasant on the bottom. And they will move and they will shake that, no, and they don't know what it is. And after the session they will say, I don't know what that was. So that memory has stayed there because, of course, the suffering consciousness works with time. But the soul consciousness and that layer of the suffering consciousness that is the positive ego attached to it, they work on a permanent present time. The closer you are here, you are more on permanent present. And everything that touches you in your life will stay there. And all the emotional contents of your personal story will stay present. The more you are out here, you are more in the curve of time. So all these things are there alive, and this is something that modern psychology, of course, knows very well. When they come out, and when any painful memory comes out with an emotional cleaning, the emotions are not there anymore. The story will stay as a memory, because you cannot change the past, but it will stay like a story that you can hear outside and is not holding on your emotions. It will not be anymore this like, oh, every time that you hear the story you remember. It will be the story, but the emotional pressure will have been already flushed out. Does it make sense? You find that useful, the thing about air and water, the way it's flushed? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then with time in the craft, as years go by and you start to develop your toolbox, you will know how different tools and particles that you have gathered from the elements of nature, the plants, the animals, or the landscape, which one will come, which one you will use for certain cases. That's the part that makes really the craftsmanship of the healer. You have tools and you have to deal with them, with these energies, and how to do it. It's so interesting how in many cases there is this resistance of the suffering consciousness to give out things. The suffering consciousness creates the illusion to feel alive through the emotions, to the perception of the emotions. So every time that you are out of the emotional plane and you feel happy with you and you are connected with your heart and you feel steady and calm, if you are on a non-harming situation and you are on a comfortable situation that your suffering consciousness is checking and says, oh, this is okay, then you are connected with your soul. As soon as a threat happens, you can either stay on your soul state or either just fall into one of the mechanisms that will also go through an emotion to protect yourself. In our everyday life, we are so threatened and so taken from the different emotions that it's more difficult to come back to our calmness and soul. That's why in ancient times all the spiritual schools and the organized religions were offering a space in your daily life to connect with your soul. It was mainly done by three things: everyday prayer, going one day to the church for a communal soul experience, and a pilgrimage and every certain amount of time in your life. It was perfectly organized, but of course it has never been well explained, and we have lost the meaning. And then sometimes going to the church has become just mainly being exposed to the suffering consciousness of the person through the sermon. So it has lost the gathering in the soul. But all these beautiful songs on three quarters in particular keys are made for having a moment of connecting with our soul consciousness as part of the health. If we don't have that and we have the natural spirituality, what's what we do? We go to lonely moments in nature, which is the temple of creation. And that's why you become child of the land, you become part of the religion of the land. And you have a moment of personal clearness or meditation when you can stay with your soul. Because we need to constantly remember. If not, we lose it. This factory defect of the human mind. We forget. So we need to constantly make something to keep it alive. And that's why the common rituals have been done, and that's why the walkabouts and the moment in nature are done. As a natural healer, for me, it's essential to do it. I will never move out from Peru. I can travel, I can go away, but I have to always go back to Peru, to my places. That allows me to continue doing the healings, to keep the quality of the work, to keep myself centered, to keep those forces alive, to maintain the love story that I have with my healing family. But it's beyond just the healer, it's for every human being in my belief. And one last thing I want to say about the sessions. At the end of the session, most of the time, you will get a particular feeling. It's a feeling of being comfortable and protected and relaxed. The ultimate expression of relaxation is not on the muscles, is on the opening of the blood vessels. And all the little vessels open up and the blood is filling everything, and you become like red cheeky, and your hands become warm, and you feel this vibration of protection. And I'm trying to bring the understanding of that sometimes with some of my patients, because that's the same sensation that we had as babies. When we were on the cradle and there were no, threats, we were hearing the voice of our mother somewhere there, and everything was okay, and we were not taken by the suffering consciousness yet. So we all have that memory, and that memory of steadiness and contact with our soul comes at the end of the session. So the sessions are also a teaching, because it's helping you to recover the memory of the feeling, of the contact, and the calmness of the tides and the oceans of the suffering consciousness. So this whole process of the natural healing, I have learned, is at the same time a process of cleaning and working, but at the same time a teaching of recovering your connection with your soul consciousness through the feelings. I'm not talking on the sessions. And at the end of the session, the healer will not say stuff, he will say it probably the next day, because you are hanging out with a shaman. When you go to visit, you stay around. But after the session, you will be left alone to just see what you can do with your feelings. Nowadays it's a little different. People go back to work after a session. I'm just passing through the town. We have precious time together, so I try to deliver something. But I'm all the time explaining that this work is not cognitive. Do you feel this stuff helpful for you? Okay. Time really flies. It's already 12:14. It's amazing. Yeah. And I keep things on the back of my mind, just coming one after the other in this free flow. Yeah. I don't know if you have any questions.
What brought you to being
That's a good question. I feel since a child I always wanted to help. I really enjoyed very much, you know. It's an enjoyment when you connect with the things of the heart, of course. Generosity, gratefulness is a particular joy. So I think that somehow I connected with it and I looked for it, you know. But then the rest of the time I only had to say yes to things that were coming to my mind. I never wanted to learn this. It just came, you know. When I was practicing martial arts and the learning about the vital energy, it really felt something that was important for me, and I was connected with it, but I wanted to apply it to heal, you know. As soon as I heard that what could be used to heal, I wanted to do it. Yeah, I'm very close. I come from a very skeptical point of view. I call myself a spiritual skeptical because I don't buy easy into a lot of the things that are out there, you know. I'm not sure if the chakras follow those colors. I see them merging all the time. It's just like a basic reading. I'm not sure about reincarnation. I'm not sure about so many things. I don't need to be sure about those things to be able to connect with the feelings and to be able to transmit the feelings and see what happens with my patients. So I stay close to this accomplishment energy. As long as I feel that I'm able to accomplish something good, I feel that I'm okay with the right track. Whatever thirst I have for knowledge of understanding is way less important than to keep close to the accomplishing, you know? Because at the end of the day, we are here to keep this creation. And we do that through our choices, you know, of feeling, of thoughts and actions. And then we connect with what we can connect, and we have the reach that what we have. We don't have more or less than what we really have. So probably this kind of humble way of seeing, and humble is a tricky word because I feel that you become humble on the joy of experiencing something. If you are humble in your thoughts, then sometimes it's okay to have a standard to which you see yourself. It's a game of the suffering consciousness. But for me, as long as it is the accomplishment, it's okay. If I was doing the sessions and no good things were happening for people, then I will check, you know, what I do. So it's kind of I renew constantly every day, you know, my intentions. Yeah, and I'm cleaning myself all the time. I mean, whenever I go to those places, I find so much of the things that we take on the everyday basis, you know. And talking about the cleaning, you not only clean emotions that you have allowed to stay into yourselves, you clean also emotions that have been attached by others. Yeah. So again, as it is above is below, the same way you have to take a shower every certain amount of time because you sweat, but also you get dirt from the environment, the same way is important to have some cleanses. You can do it by going into the natural waters, by having healings, and of course any moment that you feel that you are strong in your soul, every time that you go to a mystical or religious or spiritual moment, then you are having a certain amount of cleanse too. That's what happens in church. That's what people, they become emotional in church. If traditional organized religion could be clean from all these vicious, greedy, controlling things, it's amazing. The wisdom that have been put by the ancient people in the rituals it's so clear. Everything is there. But it's not explained. For me, probably the biggest sin of organized religion is excess of pride, is assuming that people have a child mind, and things have been to put as you are all babies and you will always stay as babies. If they could explain the natural healing, the shamanic mechanisms behind all the different things that religion has been put, the way of living our spiritual life, it will be great tools. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's why I like natural spirituality, because there's an absence of dogmas. It's just permanent self-discovery. And what I'm doing, because in the beginning people were, I never wanted to travel out of Peru. Again, I only had to say yes. I was working in Peru. I was happy going to my trips of self-discovery in the jungle. And I was working with people in Peru of all sorts of different social levels. But then I was invited one day by a group of healers that came from another country on a trip, and some of my patients connected. And they invited me to go and do some of my sessions abroad, because they say that was interesting, and I considered that was interesting for me. I felt that the windows for knowing more about the world and seeing societies and places and seeing all these places that I have seen before in the books and in the movies was out there. So I went for that. And I still do. I travel about probably 6 months of the year out. But in the beginning, I was just doing what I could feel I could transport with me. Because I cannot transport my mountains and my jungles. So I only can transport the energies that I do, and that is what is expressed to my feelings. I don't have my herbs to work. And I cannot tell people do this or take that they cannot have access. Doesn't make sense. So it was everything about making my healings, which is also the beginning of the journey. Traditionally in Peru, before doing the plants, before doing those things, you just go and you sense and you touch and you work, and then from there you will see what comes as an inspiration for deeper cleaning. But then later people, they wanted to know more and understand more. What should I do when you leave? And I say, I don't know. I don't have any cognitive things. I want to tell you to do things that you cannot. So they started to ask me for the talks to explain more. And I was quite reluctant because of to not feed too much the mind, you know. I want to keep close, very, very close to grounded nature. And then people, they needed more than I had some heavy cases, either with big curses or with big physical things. So I said, well, the only thing that I can do, or if you want to learn something, I was kind of asking for inspiration about it. You can come and you can do, I can show you the things that I have done that work for myself. So that's what I do in Peru. I cannot call it a way of teaching. It might be for some people, but for me, I offer the natural experiences that I know that work for me, that make me discover things. So basically, I do 2 types of trips. People come to the jungle and we stay for several days, and then I explain, I do personal sessions, we walk in the forest, we merge and understand nature, and then I do work with the sacred plants, which is our major self-discovery things. And then the other things that I do, I make these kind of road trips. We go in a truck and we go to different sacred spaces during a couple of weeks. So we go to lakes and mountains and ancient temples. And in the middle of that, I do some sessions, and then we exchange. I do what I was doing with my teacher. We was basic hanging out, you know. Yeah, yeah. And then there's a lot of that happens there, you know, because a natural healer, on a major sense, for me, any master of anything, or the mastery level comes when you become like an incarnation of a force, of a truth. You can know a lot of things, but I remember with my teachers with energy, when they were teaching and when they were in the room with us, everybody was able to feel the symptoms of the energy flow and different things. When you were trying to reproduce that alone in your house, it was quite milder until you get it. But if you were in a beginning thing, that's why he was coming and he was making things with us, because he knew that God was bringing, the reality of it in ourselves. So not talking about watching a DVD, you just get there like a shadow. Yeah. It might be useful for a while, but this is really just like a shadow. So I remember, a traditional healer in Peru, if you come and you say that you want to learn, he will say, just come and stay for a while. And he will come and ask you to come to do any silly stuff, and he's waiting for the connection of feeling good with you, to see if this spontaneous feeling good bridge can happen. If it doesn't happen, it's a sign that maybe things will not really flow, It's the same for business. And the echo of that is still today. If you are going to make a partnership, you want to hang out a little bit and feel good, and have some drinks and meet your family, and then we establish an invisible link from the heart beyond just what the mind wants. Yeah. So many echoes in our life from the traditional healing way, The fact that we put our hands, somebody has a problem, and it's sad, and we touch the person. That's an echo, of the transmission of the flow, of the force of life. I remember when my parents were sick, and both of my parents they passed away, and they had this Alzheimer, really difficult times. But I stayed with them, and I was with them until the end. And I had this incredible, nice lady, middle-aged, young middle-aged, that I brought her to the house as a carer for my parents when I was away, when I was traveling. And I discovered later, she's a very close person to me, we still keep contact. She was the daughter of an Amazonian shaman. And she just came to my house out of the blue. Wasn't that amazing? But I remember that without knowing that, it took me years to understand that, I was noticing something. People from her friends or her family were calling her when they had trouble and they would have problems or love story, cryings and things like that. And they were calling her, and she was on the phone just saying this all the time. Yeah, don't worry. Everything is going to be okay. She was never bringing a solution. She was never trying to build up a escape route, Just by saying those things, she was cuddling with the love force, and people were calling all the time to her because they were with this need of this connection with the healing force. Even if, what should I do? Should I stay? I discovered this. Should I bring it back? And she was saying, everything is going to be okay. And it was working. Because in her not too much probably trained mind, she was wise, with the energy wise. Yeah.
How many people do you typically have in a group that would go to Peru to be with you?
I work with very small groups. When we make these walks to these walkabouts, road trips to the sacred spaces, I only take what I can put on a truck. So 3, I drive all the time. 3 or 4 if they want to be a little uncomfortable in the back seat. I would like to make it bigger, but the thing is that we do a lot of real off-road thing. I mean, we go in the desert deep, deep, deep where nobody goes. And we go in some places, and we walk. I concentrate what it took me some years to do, sometimes on horseback or sometimes like staying on a town and walking. The Peruvian magical space is so big that so many to choose from, and I have people who come back every year and go to different routes. and I bring them to the place that I have connected before, you know. So I'm already kind of a child of that land, and I'm kind of hosting something in my place. So 3 to 4. And then when we go to my place in the jungle where I have all these cabins, I like to have groups between 6 to 10 people. So it's not at all that people are going to do the plants and they sit sometimes in front of 20, 30 people, people who have never met, people who come in and out, and the healer or the shaman doesn't really know anything about those persons, you know. There's no personal breach. The space of the ceremony with the plants, which is 3 to 4, 5 hours, is so precious that we can do so much if we have already done some sessions and meet the person. Yeah. So I'm doing it like the older way, you know. Yeah. And prayer is always going to be meant to be small, which is okay because everything is about results. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about the sacred plants? You mentioned them several times.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so much to say about it. I'm not sure if we have the time now, but I will say, just in the original myth, you know, everywhere where humans arrived, the big spirit provided what we needed. So it was a time when we humans we were almost not able to make it as a survival group. The weather, the predators and everything, it was difficult to find things. So it was a moment back in the times of our ancestors that we were almost going to fail as a survival group. And for some reason that is a mystery, the big spirit wanted us to survive, to thrive. So he sent the vegetal world in our rescue. So all the plants, they have in their spirits the desire to work with humans, and they like it. So they were coming to us in the dream, we call it the dream time. That's how the Australians say it all the time, but it's a similar concept in the Amazon. It's not because we were dreaming all the time, it's because the language of life was the symbolic language of the dreams. We didn't have any other articulate language. We were just sensing things, you know, with these analogies and things. So they came to us and they start to reveal themselves for their help. So the most modern, rational time story that we were this horde of ignorant apes trying things, and some people were dying, some others not, and so we'll start to story for us, you know. They came to us and they say, I want to help you for this. I can help you for that. I can heal you for this. So we just start to take. So the big spirit has put everywhere where humans have arrived, vegetals that are in the service of our thriving. And that has to be taken very humbly. It's not that nature is in my service, so I take what I want. But it's this association of joy, you know, that I become a human on my heart, and I will become this expression of my understanding of life, and then I receive what life brings me. So there were plants that were helping us for our food, some plants that were helping us for our shelter, for all sorts of things, and some plants that were there to help us with our pains and problems in our body, and some plants that were helping for our soul health, and some plants for teaching us. So they came. They were not considered more important than others. As important is to feed, it's important to understand the world in a traditional community. Ignorance of the natural laws is considered a sickness in the natural healing. People who are ignorant of how life works and the importance of our relationship with the space, that's considered a sickness. So they were coming to us, and what the sacred plants do is that they connect us with the sacred elements of life, which are basically the soul, our soul, and the soul of everything. They talk to us through the visions, to the poetic language, and they produce this opening and connection of our soul, and the possibility of seeing, of going out of the over-empowering of the suffering consciousness and seeing it. Yeah, there is a lot of craft about it. There is a lot of wrong things that are happening in Peru, in my opinion, with the explosion of commercial sacred plant shamanism. People are brutalizing the plants. A lot of these lodges are paying people to go deep into the forest and then cut, machete, chop all these off beautiful old vines that have hundreds of years, just to bring more and more bags to serve the coming tourists that are paying a lot, and all these boats of people. A lot of people who are doing the plants, they really don't know if those plants have been brutalized. The traditional way of working with them is that the shaman knows the places in the forest where they are, and when he needs to work with his patients, he goes and he will probably offer some tobacco or something. He will smoke, and he will go into the trance. He will hold the vine, and he will start to sing and to vibrate and to pull. So you are like that, and you are asking for the connection, for the joy of together bringing something, you know, for people. And then you start to pull, and one part of the vine will fall from the tree. And that's the part that you take. But you never kill it, because it's there for you. Myself, I have been really lucky. I have been able to get, I have now close to 60 acres of Amazonian forest. I have built my housings, and I'm planting lots of different plants, you know. I have some old vines, but I'm planting a lot of different plants. And I'm researching. I have managed to get about 7 or 8 different varieties of ayahuasca, some of them that I didn't heard before. Because you are supposed to have a garden. If you want, I can give you a hint about the shamanic training. You build up a garden in your shamanic space. So in that garden, it's the same like you put all your stones and the things from your mountains and your places that you like in a vitrine. You put at the same time them on your garden. And when you are working with your patients, you are inviting them to come into your garden. And in your garden you have spaces in which sadness is going to work, and you have a fountain for this, and you have a stone for this, and you have places where people can find wisdom. Probably one day you can build your garden as a kind of equivalent of your symbolic garden, but it's a space where you get. Again, talking about this memory of people touching, you know, this unconscious memory of the traditional, ancient, primitive healing. The reason why we set up a garden and a space, and we invite our friends and family to go and be in our place, is the memory of the setting of the spiritual space. The reason why we smoke, now when it was, I'm a child of the 70s, so when it was fashionable to smoke, the fact that a lot of artists and intellectuals like to smoke, you know, brainers like to smoke, and the fact that somebody was coming to tell you a story and you were lighting up a cigarette to think better about it, is because tobacco is a sacred plant that enhances our capacity of the focusing of the mind. We carry in our society still a lot of echoes of the ancient work, and the work with the sacred plant has been extremely diminished. Is in my belief that it has been hidden, but it exists in any ancient religions. The memory that we have that in the, for example, in the more Christian Catholic thing is the cup and the sharing, because that substance is supposed to be infused with the presence of God, of the Spirit, and to produce in us the connection with the force, with the grace, the force of life. So it's the memory of sharing together on a communal experience the substance that was bringing us everything that was needed. It's very interesting. It's again an echo, you know. All these moments of the mess, you know, when you say to your neighbor, you wish the best to the neighbor, to the person who is at your side. The moment when you ask to repent and to think about your sins. The moment when you thank God for life. All those are just the same curves that are on a shamanic ceremony. But there's a moment for looking inside. There's a moment to see where we are. There's a moment to to say thank you, you know, for life. There was a moment to dance, you know, to express life. There's a moment to clean, you know. It's very beautiful. It's the same structure that has been translated in a different way. So that's what I can say now quickly about the sacred plants. There is a lot of technical stuff, of course. Yeah. And I just want to say that I don't think that necessarily everybody has to do it. Even from the traditional point of view, you don't need to do it all the time. There's some people, but it's there as an important tool of self-discovery and to discovery of the world. And I was saying that it has 3 stages. So the first part you take in the night and you go inside. On the second stage, you don't see so much about your stuff, but you learn about the world and about yourself. It's a learning phase. And it's in that phase that you take it, you start to take it at 4 a.m. to wait for the sunlight to come and understand it starts with the understanding of the sunlight as a force. And then you take it during the day and you make walkabouts in the nature, seeing the energies and the spirits and things to understand life. And on the third stage is when you connect with your personal gift and you will see and understand what they are, what to do with them, and you are full of force of life and you're so ready to go and become who you want. That's the 3-chapter stage. Some people have it overlap, and some people, for some reason, when they make the ceremonies, they have bits of each. And then sometimes they go into just one for a while. So it doesn't have to be like that, but it's very clear, and everything starts by looking inside and purging your pains. It's probably the spiritual frame, the spiritual teaching that was in the past, you know, and that all ancient religions, they recognized. It's what was called the mysteries for the ancient Greeks, you know. There was moments in the year that people were going to certain places to drink certain things and experience certain things about nature. Yeah. That's a very interesting subject to see how in history, to understand behind all the different cultural expressions. Well, I hope it has been useful for you. I'm just sharing a life experience, you know, I'm not trying to convince you of anything. But it's the same way I learned, just by sharing what we have, you know, that we build our puzzle. Okay, thank you very much.